Good evening. I'll call the meeting to order at this time. I'd like to ask Mayor Pro Tem if he will lead us in the invocation. If you will, please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you today, Lord, to do business in the community we're so proud of, to live here and serve here, Father. We thank you for our new employees, Lord. We thank you for the fellow citizens that are present with us tonight and those that can't be here, Lord, that may be ill or sick, or that you look after them, Father. We ask that you give us wisdom to make decisions, to make this community the best it can be. We ask all this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Gentlemen, you have the agenda in front of you. We do have one known change to the agenda at the applicant's request to remove public hearing item number 1, RZ-1804, and SUP-1802. Remove that from this month's agenda. Any other additions or corrections to the agenda? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as stated.
I move we approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. So just for clarification, for item number 1, which was the public hearing, it's actually the special use request, the SUP request for the planned unit development, which was asking for a rezoning and so forth. So just to be clear, if there's anyone in the audience that was here for that, that's not going to be this month. So those of you who would like to stay, feel free, but if you just don't want to stay and listen to our meeting, and this was what you were here for, just want you to know it's not on for this month. Yes, sir.
If that comes back on the other agenda, will it be re-signed?
It'll be another public hearing. It'll be same type of notice.
Yeah, so the notices will go back out. Yes, sir. Yep.
To all the adjacent landowners.
If you're,
The notice would go to all the adjacent landowners.
correct. If you received a notice this time, you'll receive one next time.
So yes, the same notice will go out.
Then how about the one? Is that going to be addressed or not?
Yes,
That will remain on tonight's agenda. Okay. Okay, our first item this evening is administering the oath of office to Officer David George. I'll ask the police chief and Officer George and anyone else, any members of the family that would like to come forward for the administering of the oath of office.
Do you want the microphone there? Do you want the microphone? You grab it, Shane.
If you will repeat after me, please. please, sir.
Okay.
All right. I state your name.
I, David George,
The undersigned
the undersigned,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
or affirm
or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will faithfully
that I will faithfully
and bear true allegiance
and bear true allegiance
to the state of North Carolina
to the state of North Carolina
and to the constitutional powers
and to the constitutional powers
and authorities
and authorities
which are
which are
or may be established
or may be established
for the government thereof,
for the government thereof,
that I will endeavor to support,
that I will endeavor to support,
maintain,
maintain,
and defend the Constitution of said state,
and defend the Constitution of said state,
not inconsistent with
not inconsistent with
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
that I will be alert
that I will be alert
and vigilant
and vigilant
to enforce the criminal laws of this state,
to enforce the criminal laws of this state,
that I will not be influenced
that I will not be influenced
in any manner
in any manner
on account of personal bias
on account of personal bias
or prejudice,
or prejudice,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
and impartially
and impartially
execute the duties of my office
execute the duties of my office
as a law enforcement officer
as a law enforcement officer
according to the best of my skill,
according to the best of my skills,
abilities,
abilities,
and judgment,
and judgment,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations, sir. Be safe.
Congratulations. Welcome. How does this thing go in? Just click.
See, you're not an engineer, you're a planner.
You got that right. Just act the force. I don't want to break anything.
Yes, just after fourth.
Don't have microphones in Minnesota.
Hey, buddy.
Okay, we'll move on to the public hearing section of our agenda. The first public hearing is not a quasi-judicial hearing, so therefore no one needs to be sworn in. Is that correct, Madam
correct.
Clerk, on this one? And our first public hearing is ZA-18-01, Town of Smithfield. The applicant is requesting an ordinance amendment to Appendix A, Planned Unit Development Definition, that removes the minimum development size and encourages a mix of uses within a planning unit development that may include commercial and non-commercial uses.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing. I move we open the public hearing. Second. A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, Mr. Mayor and Council. Is this mic on? Everybody can hear me? This is a staff-driven amendment. The previous item that was postponed, upon reviewing the ordinance, we discovered that in order to allow such a development, the ordinance had to be amended, and we believed it would be proper and the right thing to do to allow such a development. Essentially, the zoning text amendment will eliminate an inconsistency concerning the minimum PUD size requirement. PUDs in one place in the code said the minimum area was 25 acres to be considered for a PUD. In another location, it was 5 acres. Staff believes the 5 acres is the appropriate size as was intended, and the 25 acres was something left over from the previous UDO, and it didn't get updated appropriately. We also removed the requirement, or proposing to remove the requirement that a PUD must be a mix of residential and non-residential land uses. There are instances where you may have a residential PUD that has different styles of residential and different layouts of residential that's purely residential, and in other cases you may have a PUD that is just simply commercial. And I think having more flexibility in terms of allowing one or the other and not both is appropriate. So those are the two changes to the PUD ordinance. Here's an example of the language where it says 25 in one place and 5 in the other. And here it just talks about the mix of uses, and so this is being amended. Staff believes the text amendment is consistent with the comprehensive growth management plan. PUDs are intended to be a flexible zoning district and reflect the land use guidance of the plan. The text amendment will be consistent with the UDO as the UDO changes. The amendment will allow PUDs to be more complementary to the district by preserving the character of the area. By having more flexibility, you have more ability to blend it into the surrounding land uses. With that, staff and the planning board are recommending approval of the amendment with a statement declaring the amendment to be consistent with the Smithfield Comprehensive Growth Management Plan, and that is reasonable and in the public interest.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions for Stephen at this time? Anyone in the audience have any questions? Sure.
I'm going back years ago, the traditional, I think when PUDs were first introduced in planning, we're probably talking 40 years ago. The purpose of a PUD was to allow for multiple uses. And it seems like what we're doing is, we must have had a requirement that requires multiple uses. And now we want to just allow it to allow different types of residential uses and not require the commercial.
It could be a mix of commercial and residential, or a variety of residential, maybe multifamily, single family, and townhouse. You often see a creative site plan that mixes a variety of different residential uses, which are technically single family and single family and attached townhouses are both considered single family uses. So they're not technically different uses, but practically on the ground, it's a different market. So we think it's more appropriate to have that flexibility to allow, the same single-family use, but in different styles of housing, all in the same site plan, and not have it be strictly requiring a mix of commercial and non-commercial. In many cases, there are parts of our code that it's probably not appropriate to have commercial uses mixed in with residential, yet you might want to encourage planned unit developments, that creativity. Because right now, the R8 is the only district that allows multifamily and single family as by right in the district, in a residential district, but and the only place you could use a PUD otherwise would have been in one of the commercial districts.
5 acres, I'm not disputing the request, but 5 acres seems to be a small area to have a single-family residences and multifamily. It seems like a small tract of land to have different types of residential uses. I'm
So-
not the developer of this, it just seems like it's kind of small.
Mr. Councilmember, that is an example where, let's say you might have commercial on the ground floor and residential on the second floor, or office on the second floor, or a mix of ground floor office and retail. So again, it's more flexibility. Maybe there would be no residential on a really small site.
Any other questions for Stephen? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Close public hearing.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move we approve the request.
Second. Motion and a second to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Do we want to excuse me, Mr. Mayor, have a statement declaring its consistency with the plans and policies.
Yeah, we can do that as a second motion. I think that's on,
I move that the council declare
42.
that the action is consistent with the town of Smithfield Comprehensive Growth Management Plan, and it's reasonable and in the public interest.
All right. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move to the next public hearing. This, as like the first one, is not a quasi-judicial hearing, so no need to swear anyone in. It's RZ-18-01 for Mr. Stephen Tom Medlin. Turn that over to Stephen. We'll open the public hearing after you.
Okay. All right, the applicant here is Stephen Medlin. It's 2 properties. The location is at Brightleaf Boulevard and Hancock Street. The proposed rezoning from OI, Office Institutional, to B2. It's about a 1-acre site. If rezoned, all the uses permitted within the B2 zoning district can be considered for future approval. The existing use is an office strip center. The location is here on the zoning map. As you can see, Brightleaf and Hancock. It's a 2 buildings on 2 properties.
All right, so I'll stop you right there, and then do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right,
Okay.
now we can move forward.
Okay, thanks. So in 2001, a site plan was approved for the business center as a multi-phased project spanning 2 properties. 2 freestanding buildings were constructed, 33 parking stalls and standard landscape yards. Here's a picture of the site. 6 leasable units between 2 buildings, with 3 occupied by Allstate, LabCorp, and Aveda Hearing Care Center. Most professional office uses are permitted within the B2. So currently, in the B2, you can have the same office uses that are currently on the site. By doing this rezoning, there will be no nonconformities created, again, because office uses are allowed in the B2. The retail uses are not permitted in the office institutional district, and the applicant is having trouble filling all of his spaces and would like to have the additional flexibility of allowing some retail uses mixed in with those office uses. Again, just to seek a wider range of tenants. So some of the permitted uses in the B2 zoning district include convenience stores, floral gift shops, hardware stores, barber and beauty shops, and restaurants. So the type of uses that you would see being added into the mix of what he's already seeking. Staff believes this is a proper use for the land. The zone is currently, the area is currently a mix of OI and B2 properties, zoned properties, and none of which are consistent with the underlying land use plan in the growth management plan. So the plan hasn't been followed too well in the past, and we have a mix of uses out there. Similar rezonings have occurred in the area despite of the land use designation on the comp plan. Adjacent properties within this corridor are currently zoned and developed as commercial again, so the use of this site will be contextually consistent and we believe appropriate. It will be consistent with the UDO. There'll be no nonconformities created by this. Again, it'll be compatible with the surrounding land uses. There is a mix of commercial and office institutional uses in that area. So staff is recommending approval of the rezoning based on the reasons stated. and is requesting that the planning board also recommended it in favor. So staff is requesting requesting the town council review the petition, hold the public hearing, and decide whether to approve or deny the rezoning with a consistency statement.
Okay. Any questions?
That's where the lab core is, isn't it? Lab
Correct.
core? Okay.
Mayor, I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Well, I have one point. We did change the OI so they can permit restaurants. So we changed that last time to permissible. So I'm just saying, they
Yes.
can't have restaurants in there now. I just want to make sure we know that, because we changed that last time. So the other things they could not, but they can't have restaurants. Okay.
Anyone in the audience wish to speak on this matter? Not seeing any. Any other questions from the council? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. Favor say aye.
Mayor, I make a motion we approve the request and adopt the statement in support of same on page 47.
Second.
Okay. So, motion and a second to approve the rezoning, the statement of consistency with the comprehensive growth plan. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Move on to the next public hearing. This again is not a quasi-judicial hearing. It is RZ-18-02, TEMA LLC. The applicant is requesting to rezone 2 parcels of land totaling approximately 7.03 acres from B3 to heavy industrial zoning district. Properties considered for rezoning are located on the west side of the intersection of Brogdon Road and Walpat Road, and further identified as Johnston County Tax ID 15K11012 and 15K11012C. Motion to open the public hearing.
Move the open public hearing.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
All right, Mayor and council. The
Before we
applicant,
get started, but on page 49, it says it's a 26.57 acre tract.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
there's two parcels.
Okay, yeah, so we got 703 and 1957, sorry. Yeah, so total 2657. Sorry, looking at the wrong number.
Okay. So it is 2 parcels. It's Frank Lee is the applicant. And again, it's the corner of Walpat Road and Brogdon Roads. The owner is TEMA LLC, and they're requesting a rezoning from B3 to heavy industrial. If rezoned, all uses permitted within the heavy industrial zoning district can be considered for future approval. The existing site is undeveloped. And this is the site. A portion of the site is being used, as you can see here, for like truck storage and other uses. This is a older picture. The property is undergoing a change right now. On February 1st, February 1st, 2010, a conditional use permit was approved for an outdoor storage area and associated with a materials handling facility over both properties. The 7.03 acre property was later split off from the larger parcel and was used for outdoor storage in association with the business next door at 1420 Walpat Road. The CUP at that time required a site development plan, including landscaping, lighting, and parking to comply with the UDO prior to issuance of a zoning permit. No such plans were ever submitted, and no zoning permit was ever issued for that outdoor storage use, even though the property was used for that. The larger parcel has been vacant since the conditional use approval, and the smaller parcel, as I said, was used for outdoor storage, in violation of the CUP condition. Therefore, prior to an issuance of any zoning permit for this use, required landscape lighting and parking will be required in order for that conditional use permit to be valid. And here's a picture of the site. So the future land use map guides this property as industrial. The rezoning will be consistent with the UDO, as all the proposed uses and future land uses will meet the minimum development standards. It will be compatible with surrounding land uses. There could be some issues in the short term because across Brogden Road, there are some existing single-family structures and structures used for other purposes in that area. But ultimately, they're guided for industrial, and as they get rezoned for industrial uses, they'll become more compatible. As you can see here, where am I? This strip in here, there is a mix of some commercial, some single-family structures, some used as single-family residences, some not. And again, over time, that area will become more compatible with the industrial uses. With approval of the rezoning, the town council is required to adopt a statement describing whether the action is consistent with an adopted comprehensive plan and other applicable ordinances. Planning board and planning staff consider the action to be consistent and reasonable. We're recommending approval, and we're requesting that the town council respectfully review the request, hold the public hearing, and make a recommendation for approval or denial for the rezoning with a consistency statement. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions for the planning director?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I understand the big lot. That doesn't have any, that looks perfect industrial to me. I don't have any issues related to that at all. I'm a little concerned about the side on the other side of the street that does have family resident homes over there in that community. I'm a little concerned about that because I thought that's the purpose of having the IO in that area with that, so it buffers between businesses and industry and residential. Isn't that the purpose for that? And so I'm concerned about that. Are there not residents that would live bordered up to that zone on the outside? You know what I'm talking about? So with the red across the street, yep. Are there not homes of people living in that community right there next? And with heavy industrial, we already had people complain related to when we did when we added the concrete plant down there, rezoned down there. There was complaints because of the small number of houses on the corner. Those people were not happy about moving industrial into their area. And my concern is that these people here, I don't know if anybody's asked them, but I don't think they'd be happy about that. Across the street's a different story, but that one strip, what causes me a little bit of heartache.
Mr. Council, I just want to point out that this is zoned commercial and will remain commercial. This will be rezoned for industrial, so you'll still have commercial as a buffer between the industrial.
So they're not looking at doing that as industrial,
No.
and heavy industrial. That was my.
I'm sorry, I may have misstated.
Because I thought it said 2 tracts of land. That's why I was.
Yes,
You said one on this side, one on that side. Okay.
the industrial is here. This is all zoned commercial, and they would like to turn this also into industrial.
Okay, but the other side of the street is going to, it is what? What's that zoned as?
Commercial, B3.
B3, and it's staying on, it's to stay B3. They're not looking to change that?
No. and
Okay,
there
well,
are-
that's, okay.
And there are businesses there
I'm
currently,
good
a
with
gas
that.
station and a
Just-
few others.
All right, I just was concerned.
Sorry
about
for
that.
that misunderstanding.
If you could point out for the audience, the 7-acre tract and the 19-acre tract.
The 7-acre tract is this smaller piece with the outdoor storage, and the larger piece is just undeveloped.
This land goes all the way up to the railroad tracks, is that correct?
Correct.
So looking at Brogden Road, would there be any road widening?
I don't know the DOT's plans for that road. I mean, that certainly could be a potential in the future. There's nothing that we know at this point.
What about the traffic lights in the area right there?
Don't know. But as the development comes forward, plans will be forwarded to the DOT, and at that time, they'll have an opportunity to address any of their own plans and issues with the property and the development.
Any further questions? Anyone in the audience have any questions you'd like to speak on this matter? Yes, sir. If you will, please come forward to the front. State your name and address for the record.
Just a question. My name's Ken Langston. I live at 2255 Buffalo Road. My question is to you, Steve, can the jail be located on that site if it's rezoned?
I'm not sure what zoning district the jail would need to be in. I don't have my code book handy, but I don't believe so, but I don't know so.
Okay. Thank you.
It is a permitted use in heavy industrial.
So jails are a permitted use in the heavy industrial district, just to clarify. Thanks, Mike.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
My name is Tony Nixon. Steve, I just wanted to point out that section right there, that's the red section, that's commercial? Now,
Yep.
okay, so this is the only commercial building there. The rest of these are residential houses in here. I think that was a question that one of the councilmen had, if there was residential housing there. Now, there are several houses from here, all the way down. So there is no other businesses or commercials there.
I don't know if all those houses are occupied, but that area is guided for commercial. So it will, over time, act as a buffer from the industrial. So it'll go from industrial to commercial to residential, consistent with the comp plan. So this section will not change from what it already is planned, which is commercial. And so you've got some small-scale commercial uses here. More than likely, over time, you'll see more of those type of uses fill in this area.
Now, one of those,
Go ahead.
this little parcel right there, there's some multi-family housing there. So I guess my point is that as it stands now, these are all residential houses, and at least, I'd say 80–90% of them are occupied. I think there's one unoccupied house at the corner of Brogdon and Blunt Street, but the remaining houses are occupied. Yeah, well, I agree with that, but there's still people living in those others. And I think any future heavy industrial use there would impact them greatly on that little stretch there. And also just with the usage of Martin Luther King Jr. Drive there coming out of there, that is a kind of a major thoroughfare for ingress and to Johnston Community College. So there's a lot of traffic there. So I would, caution the council to give great consideration to, what happens in the future of just that little corridor there. And also, Brogdon Road probably being, with all of the infrastructure that the town has already put there, being an area of high growth even east of that area. So that's my point.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. Anyone else in the audience? So just as a follow-up to Mr. Langston's question, so you asked a question about the jail. The jail could go on that property right now as by use, so just FYI. Yes, sir. If you will, please state your name.
Hey, Mr. Mayor and Council, my name is Paul Embler, and I'm here representing Mr. Lee this evening. He was not able to be here, but he asked me to come and speak in his behalf. Just to let a little bit of history here come forward, is that the properties on Brogden Road that are residential were brought forward primarily by the owners of the property for rezoning to B3. And this all occurred in the, back that 2010 timeframe, about the same time the other zoning occurred out there. And there was a number of property owners that brought their property in and requested rezoning. And the council at that time saw fit to rezone the properties to B3 commercial. On the north side of Brogden Road, which is the side opposite the side under consideration for rezoning, there are only 2 residential properties that are not zoned B3 between US 301 and the interstate. So, and those are 2 smaller houses that are there. I believe that one of them is a vacant property. I think it's already been addressed by the planning director. And if I'm not mistaken, that property has also been posted by the building inspector as being a condemned property. And that's the one I think that Mr. Nixon referred to on the corner of Blunt Street. And the other property, I'm not sure what the status of that is, but if that provides a little light on those questions, and if I can add anything else, I'd be happy to.
Do we have copies of that information from when they brought it to be rezoned or whatever? We got documentation of that?
Yes, sir.
I was just curious, Paul, probably appropriate for Steve, you probably know the answer. What would be a yard buffer? Let's say a plan came forward to develop this as a heavy industrial site. In addition to Brogden Road itself being a buffer, what would be setback buffers off of Brogden Road?
The planning director may be able to address that better than I, because there's been a new ordinance adopted since my departure. But I think if I recall correct, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, adjacent to the industrial property, there would be no requirement for a buffer at all, but adjacent to the commercial and to the residential, it would be 40 feet?
The setback?
No, the buffer.
I can't even say.
Okay. But the setback would be based by the district, and the B3 district would have a given setback of either 35 or 50 feet, I believe, is what the new ordinance says.
And I know this is speculation, but I'm just asking, if the site were developed, would we be looking at entranceways off Brogden or Walpat Road, or potentially both, or hard to say?
That's going to be pretty well controlled by NCDOT, because those are both their roads. And as the planning director has said, that the plans, any development plans will be sent to them. Just common sense would tell you that there would not be any entrances allowed near the current intersection, that they will push them back either toward the railroad or down Walpat Road some distance.
Just thinking, we just had a site plan approval for Penn Compression, and I believe their front yard landscape yard, their buffer yard was 15 feet. So I believe it would be the same along Brogden Road, a 15-foot landscape yard, and I believe a 40-foot setback.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion and a second, all in favor? Public hearing is closed. Gentlemen, I have a motion to approve or deny the request.
Make a motion to approve the request. Second.
Is that, just for clarification, Councilman Dunn, is that the approval along with the consistency statement as outlined on page 53?
Yes, that is.
Thank you, sir. All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Lots of public hearings tonight. Move on to the next one. This is public hearing RZ-18-03, W. Frank Lee. The applicant is requesting to rezone 4 tracts of land from R20A zoning district to the B3 business zoning district. The properties considered for rezoning are located on the east side of Buffalo Road, approximately 160 feet south of the intersection with Bookadary Road, and further identified as Johnston County Tax ID 140753030G, 140753030F, 140753027, and 1407528. Have a motion to open the public hearing.
Move to open public hearing.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Stephen, turn it over to you,
Council.
sir.
The applicant is Frank Lee. We are talking about 4 properties. I've got the PIDs listed here. The property is located very near the Buffalo Road and Bookadary Road intersection, just south of there, southeast. Owners are Mabel Wallace Hamilton, Brian Thomas, and Todd Hamilton Grant. The applicant's requesting a rezoning from R20A, which is a low-density residential, to B3, highway commercial. 6-acre property. The existing use is residential and agricultural, as are some of the properties surrounding. You've got the SECU Credit Union located here to the north, and some vacant commercial property surrounding that. You've got the community park here and Shrek located here. And this is Smithfield Middle School. So we have, the property is pretty much surrounded by office institutional uses. DOT owns this corner property here, and there's a residential property in that area. So one of the issues with this request is its consistency with the growth management plan and land use plan. Our growth management plan, if you've ever read through it, doesn't provide a ton of guidance for much of the city. I mean, it has a little bit of language, but in this particular instance, there are these little red dots located at key intersections that surround the city, and they're considered commercial service nodes. And there's actually quite a bit of language in the comprehensive plan providing guidance on what the town said it wanted to do with these sites. Areas that are close to these red dots. Commercial service nodes are meant to be mixed use, limited commercial focus areas to service the neighborhood. And in the UDO, a mixed use could only be done with a PUD special district rezoning. That's the only way you can actually turn it into a mixed use development. So the rezoning they're requesting will not accommodate mixed use, which is what the comprehensive plan is telling us. And with a PUD special district rezoning, you need a master plan with the rezoning. So it's an attempt as a PUD. A PUD requires higher level of connectivity, and basically the applicant needs to demonstrate how this is a development with a scale that fits into the neighborhood. Commercial service nodes are supposed to be buffered from surrounding uses by office institutional land uses, residential uses, and high density residential uses. If you remember from the slide back, there actually are buffers already existing off-site. So I don't think that's really a concern so much about the buffering. That kind of exists naturally already. But it does require pedestrian connections between sites. PUDs, by their nature in the code, you're supposed to have a higher degree of connectivity. And the only way you can guarantee that is with a plan, because straight B3 zoning doesn't have any stipulation saying you need to have sidewalks to the Shrek, to the community park, or to the credit union to the north. those kinds of things. You know, what's in the surroundings, how are you going to connect to it? Again, compatibility in size and scale with the surroundings. With straight B3 zoning, anything kind of goes as long as it's within that land use. How you develop it, we have much less control without a plan. Shared vehicular access between adjacent commercial. I don't know how much opportunity there is for shared vehicular access, but there are opportunities for trail and sidewalk connections from this site to adjacent land use to make it more compatible. And again, a specific area development plan is required with a PUD zoning, and also it's required as part of the comp plan guidance. Another place under implementation strategies, there's more similar language, emphasis on convenient pedestrian circulation systems. It's emphasizing mass transit if we had it, so there's a lot of language here. Essentially, what the comp plan is saying, you know, a lot of the B3 is developed so that like a strip center. And the comp plan is really trying to turn that inside out, and this is a graphic from the comprehensive plan. So rather than these individual sites with parking lots out by the road, it's envisioning turning it inside out and having kind of parking courts with commercial closer to the road. You've probably seen developments like that, and they tend to therefore be less impactful on the land uses next to them because the parking is more contained. Now, keep in mind, this is only a 6-acre site. DOT is probably going to take some of that land, so the site's getting smaller. But there's quite a bit of language in the code, and the question is the comprehensive plan relevant in this situation? It's a 20-year-old plan. We're at the threshold of kicking off a brand new planning process to reevaluate the comprehensive plan and land use. But it is still our guiding document, and the guiding document is providing a lot of direction to me as planning director as to how to guide this land. And so that is the nature of the reasons for my recommendation for denial tonight. We believe the rezoning will be inconsistent with the growth management plan for the reasons I stated. It will be consistent with the UDO. I mean, either way, it'll have to comply. We believe it'll be incompatible with the surrounding land uses when you consider all the language in the comp plan saying it's supposed to be of a scale and nature more suitable than a typical B3 zoning. You know, B3 zoning by itself will offer anything from, you know, car dealerships, gas stations, convenience stores. You know, it's a pretty big list. It's the biggest list of land uses we have. And the land uses can still be the same, but with a plan, you'll see how they're put together, and you can then conditionalize it to mitigate any impacts you would have to adjacent property owners or to create those connections as requested in the comp plan. So because of that, staff is recommending denial. The planning board also agreed with staff and recommended denial for the reasons stated. The town board is respectfully being requested to consider this application, hold a public hearing, and make a declaration whether in favor or against the rezoning. And in this case, it could be contentious. I really would urge the council to state how it's consistent or inconsistent with the comp plan so that you know, the reasons are clearly stated. And you can reference staff's findings, or you could find some different ones. With that, I'll take some questions.
As I gather from the staff notes, staff is in favor of B3 cut.
Correct. Well, it's PUD.
Did you have those discussions with the applicant?
Yes,
They were against it?
they were against it.
One thing I've noticed, we're not getting the applications as part of our package anymore. Is there any reason for that? We used to have applications as part of our package. We can't review the application if we don't have it.
My apologies if it didn't make the packet. That I didn't know. There wasn't much to it. It was a application sheet that requested just a rezoning.
I have a question, Mayor. Sure. Considering that our park backs up this property, we change it from R28 to B3 as proposed. What kind of buffer would that be? What kind of impact, does your opinion, have on the park and B3 projects, whatever it may be?
I'm not entirely sure of the buffer, but I don't think it's a very large one. Commercial to industrial is not a large buffer. I think it's half of a type A buffer, but I'm not 100% sure.
Any other questions for the planning director? Any questions or comments from anyone in the audience? And if so, if you will, please come forward. State your name and address.
My name is Paul Embler, and I'm here on behalf of Frank Lee to address some of the questions that have been arisen here. First off, might I say that there's multiple ways in the ordinance to get to the same end. The comprehensive plan directs this to be a commercial service node. Note the word commercial. It is, one way to do that is, as planning staff has suggested, is go B3 PUD. Another way is just a straight B3 rezoning. Mr. Lee chose the straight B3 rezoning. And the reason why he chose it was because he has no intended plan for the property now. He has purchased the land, and I'll remind the council that the land's basically been there for 10 years and no one's looked at it. Mr. Lee has made the venture to invest in the town and put an option to purchase on the property with intent of development. He's trying to get his entitlement out of the land, and an entitlement means that he's trying to get the zoning in accordance with the comprehensive plan so that it can be developed. And what the planning director suggested about interconnectivity, particularly with pedestrian access, that is true. The comprehensive plan does speak to that, but the town also has other documents that speak to that. For one, any commercial development has to have a sidewalk on the street frontage. So there is going to be connection up and down any street frontage that's on there for the full length of the frontage. There would also have to be curbed and guttered. That would be driven by DOT in the town. There's another tool that the planning department has that they can do there. We have a comprehensive recreation plan that delineates the Mountain to the Sea Greenway, and the corridor is roughly defined going up from the park where it exists now, up Buffalo Road, and further on up the road it transitions back to the river as an alternate route. So there are some other tools that the planning department could use to say we need interconductivity for the pedestrians that are using the park to get into the commercial properties. I really don't see DOT, and I can't speak for DOT, but as you may or may not be aware, DOT has got Buffalo Road on the horizon for major improvements. It's going to be a 4-lane road with a median. And that's coming quick. And Buffalo Road is also going to be the town's only access to the new Interstate 42. It will be our only interchange within our jurisdiction. So Buffalo Road is going to change as the future goes through. 40 years of engineering and planning experience tells me that DOT is going to be very picky on what they allow on Buffalo Road as far as access and egress. My humble opinion is this property will get one access and egress from Buffalo Road. It will be a right in and a right out because there's going to be a median there. It's too close to the interchange. The other thing, if there is access that comes off of Booker Dairy Road, it's also going to be a right in and right out. So, but DOT totally controls Booker Dairy Road. One thing that staff brought up was that the SEU didn't have all the interconductivity for pedestrian circulation, and there was a reason for that. When the credit union located there, we knew DOT was going to be coming up with the next phase of Booker Dairy Road, and it seemed kind of fruitless to require them to put curb and gutter in and put a sidewalk in when we knew that DOT in just a few short years was going to come back and tear it up. So the council that was in place at that time decided to forego the credit union having to put the sidewalks in. We did choose to submit as B3, and staff did, after reviewing our initial application, come back and suggest that we change it from B3, a straight B3 zoning, to a B3 PUD, which Mr. Lee decided not to do because that is the planning staff has acknowledged would require preparing a master plan for the rezoning, and the rezoning would be in accordance with that plan. Not knowing what DOT is going to do with the road, and also not knowing what the development plans are for the property, it's kind of hard to do that. So to come up with a plan would only be a plan that we would have to come back in front of the council as soon as somebody bought a piece of property and wanted to change it. So I would ask you to take it into consideration. B3 does have some limitations, but do remember that whether you rezone it B3 or B3 SUD, the uses are the same. They do not change. What's allowable in the B3 district is allowable in a B3 SUD. It's just how you present the package in the initial front end. So with that, I'll stand open for any questions.
I hear you on the DOT controlling the access, but it is presented as one parcel. In reality, it's 4 separate parcels. And as a separate parcel, how can access be denied? I mean, I know it can, but
Well,
to me, it might make a difference if we're looking at one parcel versus 4.
normal order of progression is you get the rezoning and then you do a recombination in order to get the parcels together the way you want or the way that you need. It seemed a little bit premature to go ahead and ask for a recombination, not knowing that you were going to get the rezoning. Because then it would have to be undone.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Y'all didn't put that in your, did you put that in your application that it would, if rezoned, it would be recombined into one lot?
No, we did not. That's more or less conditionalized in the rezoning. The rezoning really ought to stand on its own.
Driveways wouldn't be issued, driveway permits wouldn't be issued unless there was a development plan, and there's no way Mr. Lee would develop this as 4 individual sites. I don't think it'd be cost efficient.
I would agree. My humble guess is that DOT is going to force probably one access off of Buffalo and one access off of Booker Dairy. It would be what you would be looking at.
Does this property go to Booker Dairy?
Does not.
It does not. DOT owns land. They own the corner.
Right.
They purchased that at the time the Phase 1 Booker Dairy Road extension was done. DOT purchased it at that time.
Right. So there was some talk about possibly, when that work was completed, that DOT may turn that property over to the town.
Prior to my departure with the town, I made an approach on several occasions to DOT to see if that was still the case. The most recent being when the town was looking with the county to do an equalization facility, and the answer was no. Now, if that's changed since then, I don't know.
I thought it was the exact opposite. I thought you were the one who told me when you were planning director that was the case. So that's where I got my information from. So the fact that it is now a no is news to me.
I was in a meeting with a former town manager, Mr. Connett, and we were told that, but evidently things changed.
Right. No, I understand. Because at the same time, I had questions about the State Employee Credit Union and the sidewalks and the widening and all that. I distinctly remember that. All right. Any other questions?
I do have just one question, and it's probably because it's in the business item. To put money aside for the comprehensive growth management plan. How old is our current plan?
As I had stated, it is 20 years old.
20. And when that was formed, I'm assuming this 4-lane of Buffalo was not a thought on anybody's radar.
I had a question. I'm looking over the staff analysis and commentary, and it says on page 57, last paragraph, first sentence of the last paragraph says, implementation strategy B, implement a mixed-use district. That's what it says, strategy. Then if you turn over to the first paragraph on the second page, almost at the end, it says, the mixed use can only be accomplished with the PUD development. So this sounds like we can't have, it's not going to be the same thing. So one is different than the other one, that you have to do what the strategy is. We would have to reject this in place of a PDU, B3 PDU, because that's what am I reading this wrong? It says here that the strategies do this, and the only way to do this is with the PUD.
Correct.
That's what the staff's opinion is, correct?
The only way you can do a mixed-use development is through a PUD.
And that's the strategy that the town of Smithfield has put forth for that particular area of town. That's what the staff is saying, correct?
Based on the comp plan, if you want
I needed to know.
to follow the comp plan and have it be mixed use, the rezoning would have to be PUD.
But we just did a text amendment on the first item that eliminated the requirement for mixed use in the PUD.
Right, but if they came forward with a plan that was not mixed use, it would not be consistent with the comp plan. So the comp plan's saying you'd use the same tool, but it would be mixed use. You can use PUD elsewhere and have it not be mixed use, but in this instance, the comp plan is saying they want a mixed use, and the only way you can achieve mixed use is through PUD.
I may be wrong, but I just, I'm not a developer, but I just wouldn't see a set of offices, a gas station, and 14 single-family residences on that 5-acre tract is a mixed use area. Like I said, I'm not a developer.
Yeah, I mean, the only way you could do all that is very, very urban development.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's the pleasure of the council.
I move that we take the recommendations of the staff and deny it based upon the information that they provided in their findings.
Second.
Motion and a second to deny
Deny the application.
the application. The motion and a second to deny. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Two opposed? Okay. Motion to deny carries. Thank you, Jim. to our next public hearing. And if there is anyone wishing to speak for or against this, if you will, please stand and be sworn in by the clerk. And I think that does include our planning director. Correct. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this matter need to be sworn in.
Okay.
I don't see him.
Do you solemnly affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay. Is the applicant here? Okay. So we move forward still. Okay. This is SUP-18-03, George's Barns. The applicant is requesting a special use permit to allow for a U-Haul rental business on property located within a B3 business zoning district. The property considered for approval is located on the south side of US Highway 210, approximately 630 feet west of its intersection with US Highway 70 business, and further identified as Johnson County Tax ID 150-76019. Gentlemen, I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved, Mayor.
Second. A motion and a second. All in favor? Please. Okay.
All right.
Turn it over to you, sir.
Mr. Mayor and Council, George Suevas is the owner of the property, 101 NC Highway 210. It's currently the site of George's Barns. Late last year, a conditional use permit was was granted to allow a business to sell storage barns, storage shelters on the property. Property is 1.22 acres. It's B3 zoning. Located here on the zoning map, so it's just west of where 210 steers away from Market Street, excuse me. Wrong property. Here we go. This is the site plan from the George's Barns conditional use permit. The buffer yard is in place. There's a small structure located here with a parking facility in front, and the barns are currently located on the sides of the existing structure. Here's a picture of the facility. As you can see, he's already parking U-Haul trucks on the property, which is the nature of this request. We told him he couldn't do that, so we applied for a conditional use permit. We allowed him to keep them there till the outcome of this proceedings. So conditional use permit 1607 was approved for the outdoor storage and display associated with the storage shed business. He did the site improvements. There is a history of parking on the grass. The sheds are on the grass. The outdoor storage is allowed to be on the grass, but we found his pickup truck on the grass. And originally the U-Haul business was parked on the grass rather than on the parking lot. He does have excess parking out there for the use. By the use and the size of the building, he's required to have 2 stalls and handicap accessible parking. So he exceeds what's required by code. So the U-Haul business will have no impact we believe will have no impact as long as it's conducted on the paved parking lot. Because if it goes out into the grass areas, that grass area is going to become mud. Mud's going to get on the parking lot and into the road, and the site's going to just be a mess. So the town council can issue a special use permit if it has evaluated the application through a quasi-judicial process, which we're doing tonight, and that it meets the findings as I have highlighted here. And I'm not going to go through all these, but I've added a few conditions to the approval. One, that the rental trucks and trailers be stored on the paved parking lot, as you see in the picture. I think that'll be a much better outcome for the town. And that the rental use occupy no more than 14 of the 17 parking stalls at any time, so that the original required parking is maintained for the other business. And that there be no parking of vehicles or trailers on the lawn or landscaped areas. So 3 conditions. Planning board agreed with staff's recommendations. Town council is respectfully requested to review the request, hold a public hearing, and make a decision with findings of fact in support of the decision. Any questions?
Questions?
He may have clarified it. What is it currently zoned as?
It's B3.
Okay. Is the parcel beside that zone B3 as well? It looks like there's a residence.
It's his, he owns it, actually. Let me go back.
So I guess he wouldn't object to this project.
It's not zoned, but it's probably guided. I believe it's guided B3, but it's not zoned B3, the adjacent parcel. But Mr. Suevas owns that.
Any other questions for Stephen at this time?
Can you read that?
Okay, so the applicant is not here, and there's no one sworn in to make any statements. So if there are no further questions from the council, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move and close.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
So, gentlemen, the findings of fact, I think, are located on page 67 of our agenda, I believe.
I move to approve findings of fact 1 through 8.
Second.
With the condition.
So would that be part of the second motion?
Second motion. I'll second. Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
I move we approve the request with the 3 conditions outlined by staff.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that is it, sir. For now.
Briefly.
We had an application on that one, that's why it's so much quicker, so.
Yeah, I apologize for that.
Yeah, it was so detailed. Okay, this time we'll move on to citizens' comments. If there's anyone wishing to speak during citizens' comments, please come forward. Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now we'll move on to business items. First business item is consideration and approval to enter into the following service agreements. We have a few. A, Stewart Incorporated to prepare the comprehensive growth management plan in the amount of $93,400. And B, Kimberly Horn to prepare the comprehensive transportation plan in the amount of $100,412.25. Stephen?
All right.
Turn it over to you, sir.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I did prepare.
Justification.
Pardon?
So I hope you have a very persuasive justification.
Sure.
Pretty high dollar amounts for those documents.
Well, you heard the last item that our land use plan is 20 years old, and after a while, it gets a little bit tough relying on something that people envisioned 20 years ago, and lots has changed in the town. So that and the transportation plan are very much needed. So this is one presentation for the two different planning documents, and I'll tell you why. And you're correct about the amounts, so we'll go on from there. I'm going to skip this slide for the moment. We had the opportunity when these projects were led as separate projects, but there's tons of overlap. Land use typically provides the basis for our transportation network and vice versa. They go hand in hand. And we had the opportunity, we're interviewing them back to back to put these two contractors together and they're going to proceed. They're actually located in the same building in Raleigh. So we have an opportunity to bring these two together to create a coordinated planning process between the land use and the planning. To process this, the finance had to do a budget amendment. We had a fund, I think, from the sale of some right-of-way, which we're using to finance these individual plans. So there's a budget amendment as part of this process, part of this item tonight, and that's creating two different planning items, expenditure items under the planning budget. So I just wanted to point that out. The coordinated approach for these two different contractors will be coordinating land use, demographics, socioeconomic, and data analysis. They'll be using the same data set, and they will share each other's information to have a more robust data set. There'll be a shared branding and theming. So as we try to gather some community support, we're going to have a shared vision statement, shared graphics, shared web page, things to help push this project along in the public, help everybody understand it and get excited about it. And then will be shared public engagement. So they will share public hearings, they will share all the different public engagement items, which I will go through. Again, the unified approach is going to reflect the interconnectedness of land use, planning, and transportation, and again, the shared branding. And also, by having a shared process, we're going to be eliminating some planning fatigue, which goes along with these processes. You got, a group of people who are interested in planning for transportation, another interested in land use. With the overlap, the same people go to two different sets of meetings. We're going to combine it all so that the same group of people are going to come and they're going to get educated about both topic areas and can provide the same input, providing information for both. It's the most efficient way to move forward. Another thing, we just approved a couple months ago the stormwater management plan contract. That also has an impact with transportation and land use, and both contractors are aware that they're going to be coordinating with that process as well. So that isn't out of sight or out of mind. It's going to be very much integrated into these planning processes as much as possible. In terms of the public engagement process, we're envisioning a steering committee of residents, business leaders, town commissions, and committee members to be determined to serve as both a committee for both plans. And some meetings will be more focused on transportation, others more focused on land use, but there'll be an opportunity to wrap both topics into a single meeting as needed. There will be individual stakeholder interviews, and these again will be to be determined, but there'll be people who are most heavily impacted or have a real stake in the outcome of the plan. We'll get them into a one-on-one situation and figure out their concerns and issues and get their input on the plan on a real personal basis. And that's envisioned to be kind of a long day of inviting these people in with both sets of contractors for them to ask questions and be interviewed. There is envisioned 2 public workshops facilitated by consultants and staff, again, cooperatively, and this is really both to educate and to gather input on issues, opportunities, and solutions for the town. We are envisioning using social media and website to share information and to gather information. We're actually hoping to use surveys, and there's a part of this budget includes use of a subscription service called Public Input, which uses Facebook analytics to both reach people and to gather input. It's kind of a neat tool. It kind of captures people in real time where they are, and that budget is included. We think it's going to be a great opportunity to get public engagement where we wouldn't otherwise get it, the people who don't usually show up for meetings. The town has had some interest in that by itself for quite some time, so in a way this project will become kind of a testing ground to see if public input's a tool that can be used for other things for the town in the future. And again, it's a subscription service, so it's going to be used for this as a project-based subscription, but in the future the town can do the same thing and have it be kind of a yearly contractual thing if it's beneficial to the town for surveys and getting information out. There are a number of community events that we have, typically every year. The contractors are hoping to use these to gather feedback and provide education. So they'll set up a booth or have a little computer stand or send people out with surveys and clipboards and try to gather information. There will be some touch bases with the council throughout the process, so you guys are going to be very much part of the process. You'll be invited to attend any of the venues, as individuals, not as a quorum, but there's opportunities throughout the process for the council to be involved, but there will be specifically several presentations to the council to get direct feedback. The whole process is intended to take around 14 months, and the land use plan will probably start out more heavily in the beginning, then in the transportation plan will catch up, so they'll be kind of tag teaming throughout the process, one informing the other as they go. And I'm not going to go through this, but in your packet there is a project timetable provided by Stewart Company, and it pretty much is a coordinated plan. I asked them to put this together considering both consultants' timelines, so they had to make some modifications to fit this combined timeline. Staff is recommending approval of both contracts and the budget amendment, which I didn't list on here. And with that, staff's willing to take any questions you might have.
Any questions, comments?
I do have, and this may be directed towards the manager. And just curious if you guys had check references on this company, and do you support this plan?
References and
Like other
work
projects?
history was part of the process we used when we went through and vetted the different companies that completed the RFPs for this. So we're very confident in that. Our committee, Bill, myself, several of the other people here, Stephen, we all met as a group. We've had good discussions with both these groups. These are the two that we recommended. We believe that they'll do a great job and complete a great work product for us when it's all done.
Any other questions? Comments? Not. I have a motion to approve these contracts and the budget amendment.
I make a motion we approve the contract. I mean, it's obvious we have an outdated plan in some respects. If we can continue to have growth, we need to be able to plan for that.
I second the motion.
Motion and a second, and that is to approve the contracts and the budget amendment, Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Is that okay to include it all in one, Madam Clerk? Okay. So a motion to approve both contracts and the budget amendment for the price of those documents. Motion is second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay. We'll move on to council members' comments. Any additional comments from the council?
Mayor, I have a few comments I'd like to share. And it's, within the past week, I was in the public and out at a restaurant and got approached by some citizens. And it's good to get good feedback, and they were complimenting our staff, and I want to make sure to pass along the thanks. The citizens were speaking about their utilities and their trash pickup, so I just want to pass it on to staff. I appreciate what you guys do day to day and make all those things happen. It was something related to the garbage that gotten spilled, and the staff went above and beyond and took care of that problem, and that's what it takes. I just want to say thank you.
Any other comments?
Mayor, I'd like to say that we're trying to get, continue to generate an interest in our community for seeing if there's a way we could reestablish some local news media outlets in our town. We've been communicating through Facebook, we're communicating with people in the public. There is an interest out there. I would encourage all of us to try to talk to our business people that we know and their interest involved in it. And I think, I know I've had conversations with Wingate Lassiter related to this, and he's actually done some things on his own, looking out there on why would that, we're one of the only towns in North Carolina county seats and that have 10,000 people or more that does not have their own local newspaper. He went through the process of, explaining how it happened. It was kind of something that didn't intend to happen, that has happened. And so we need to try to find a way to, if we can, encourage our business community, because it really relies upon business community to support a local newspaper with their advertising, that there's a need. So if we get an opportunity to communicate with people who can help that along, I think we should. We're going to continue to push it along as best we can, any way we can, and we just encourage others to do the same, because we need the community. I would also comment that the newsletter that I saw that came out was outstanding. The information that we have, it is outstanding. Okay, I mean, without having a newspaper, that information is critical. So I very much appreciate the work that was done. I thought it was just, so I do appreciate that work that was done on that, and because we definitely need a way to communicate with what we're doing. Also, if we're given an opportunity going forward into the budget year, we've had some thoughts on this and some communication on this. There is, I thought I read something somewhere that said there's a recommendation that we need some type of a communication person. I read it somewhere in some of our information. Do y'all remember reading something? There was a finding or something that said they recommended a communication person?
We've talked about it.
But there was something I read something, I thought in here somewhere, there was an audit finding, yep, that there's a need for some type of communications person to do some work and related to communicating what we're doing in the town, because we do great things, but it's hard to get that information out if no one talks about it. So just thought I'd throw that out there. I appreciate all the effort that the town's making and doing what they can by themselves, but we need our community to rally around and help support it with some type of commercial endeavor.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to say just one thing. I'd like to thank all the citizens that come out to these meetings every month. A lot of times it's the same people that come every meeting, but I would like to thank y'all for the time that y'all take out of your schedule to participate and be active in the community. And I wish more people were willing to or either able to, as I'm sure the case may be. But again, I just thank all of you for the time you take out of your schedule to come participate in this.
Mr. Manager, turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a few things to mention. Chief Powell is going to be traveling later this month to Frisco, Texas. He is going to be taking his first airline ride, and he's a little nervous. So we want to wish him well and luck. He will be traveling there representing his police department, our police department in the town on his department's first reaccreditation. During the process, we've already had one review and an on-site assessment that will be discussed at that meeting, but the findings were very positive, and we are looking forward to our second round of accreditation for our police department. On another item, our boat ramp that is down next to Greenway Trail is completed. The only thing left to do there is some plantings and things that will be taking place as spring progresses. So it is fully usable and operational. We encourage our citizens to get down and take a look at it, use it, enjoy it, but take care of it. Please don't litter it up, and please take care of the surrounding areas so that we have a nice, clean greenway path to use by everyone. In that same vein, I want to thank our Public Works Director, Lenny Branch. One of the things that the staff has been working collectively on is trying to clean up our city and keep it clean as much as we can. through the use of community service workers. In the last few weeks, he's cleaned up Highway 210 in the city, Wilson's Mills Road, Outlet Center Drive, and Brogdon Road. We're going to continue with that process. Unfortunately, at this time of year, it seems to be never ending. We also have some roads that are adopted by different community service groups in town. I want to encourage them also to get out, clean their portions. I know Rotary has something scheduled later this month for their portion. And anything we can do to keep our community clean, nice, and presentable is just that much more of a positive thing for economic development and residential development in our community. Last, our Sarah Yard Center is getting prepared to open later this month. On March 17th, we are going to have an event there for those of you who are interested. This will be from 6:30 to 8:30. There'll be a free speaking event hosted by Miss Liz Alexander, who owns a consulting business called She Dreams of Freedom, located in New York. Ms. Alexander is actually going to be in this area speaking for Shaw University on a similar topic. She'll be speaking and facilitating the conversation on March 17th at the Sarah Yard Center, as asked to by Beverly Wallace, who was Sarah Yard's daughter. The conversation will revolve around the souls of black and brown girls and the Me Too movement that is taking place around our country. So it's a very proactive, very personal, encouraging conversations for our young people throughout our community. And I would encourage you, if you have children, to attend and take advantage of this opportunity. That is all I have.
Thank you, sir. Okay, gentlemen, that concludes our open session agenda. We do need to go into closed session. This time I would entertain a motion to go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11, Section A3, to consult with our attorney to preserve the attorney-client privilege.
So moved.
Motion, do I have a second? Motion and a second. All in favor to go into closed session?
Aye.
Go into closed session this time. Thank you.